Hello, welcome to Study with Deepak. Today we are going to do a new chapter, The Little Match Girl. But before we get started, I want to tell you to please subscribe the channel to Study with Deepak and press the bell icon. The Little Match Girl is written by Hans Christian Andersen. In this story, the writer depicts the poor and miserable condition of a little girl who undergoes untold suffering in her life. It is a pathetic story that touches the heart of the readers. The story begins on a cold winter night in which the snow never stopped. It was bitterly cold, snow falling and darkness was gathering, for it was the last evening of the old year. It was a New Year's Eve. So it was very cold, the snow was falling continuously, the darkness was gathering everywhere, and it was the last evening of the old year, and it was a New Year's Eve. Means the old year was dying out and it was a New Year Eve. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked barefoot through the street. So it was cold, gloom means dark. A poor girl was walking through the street. She was bareheaded, means she was not having a cap or scarf on her head, and barefoot means she was not wearing anything. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she left home. When she left home, it is true that she was wearing slippers, but what good were they? But those slippers were of no use to her. It had been her mother's, so you can imagine how big they were. The slippers which she wore while she came out of her house belonged to her mother, and for that reason they were big enough for her. The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. The little girl lost both the slippers as they were loose, they were big in size, and as she was trying to escape from two carriages, two lorries which were coming down her way, and she tried to escape from them, and in doing so she lost both of her slippers. One slipper could not be found, one slipper she lost forever, she could not find it, and a boy had run off with the other. The other slipper, a boy got that slipper, saying that it would come in a very handy as a cradle someday when he had children of his own. The boy took the second slipper and he took it with him, and he said that it will work as a cradle, a sort of a bed for infant, for small children, and he will use it when he will have his own children. That's a bit funny. How can a slipper work as a cradle? So the little girl walked around the street on her naked feet, which were red and blue with cold. In her old apron she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. Nobody had bought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day. She crept along shivering and hungry, the picture of misery, poor little thing. So she was all alone on the road, walking. She was, because of cold, because it was very cold, she was shivering, she was hungry as well. She was having a few match stick packets in her apron which she was wearing, and she had a packet of match stick in her hand as well. And but unfortunately nobody had bought any matchstick, a packet of matchstick from her. That's why she never had any money that day, and because she didn't have money, she was hungry, and because of cold she was shivering. She was an absolute picture of misery, a poor little thing. Now here the writer, the author has compared her as a thing. Means she wasn't a human being because she was poor, and she was unwanted, she was not loved by anyone. That's why she was a sort of a thing. The snowflakes fell on her golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck, but she did not think of her appearance now. She had golden hair, and they were curly, and they were just curling round her pretty face and her neck, but she never had time to look for her appearance because she was hungry. She was shivering because of cold. Lights were shining in every window. It was a New Year Eve. The lights were there in each and every house. And there was a glorious smell of roast goose in the street. And the streets were full of delicious smell. of the dishes being cooked at home. For this was New Year's Eve, as it was the evening before the New Year, and she could not think of anything else. And generally, when we smell something delicious, we feel hungry, and here too she was hungry. That's why she could not resist herself. She was unable to control herself. But unfortunately, she didn't have any money. That's why she was hungry, and it was very cold. That's why she was shivering. She huddled down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected further out into the street, then the other. But though she tucked her little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. She tried to make her safe because of this snow that was falling continuously. She came close to two houses and one had an ark in front of it. She sat there, she tucked her legs under her head, and then, but still, as it was raining, it was December month, in fact it was snowing, it was December month, it was very cold. She did not dare to go home, for she had sold no mastic and earned not a single penny. At this sort of a period, at this kind of a situation, if a person definitely wants to go back home, home is a sort of a shelter for that person. Home, how poorly furnished your home is, then also it's a sort of a place of warmth, it's a place of comfort for you. Even a poor person having a house definitely wants to go back to his place and stay there. But she didn't dare to go back home because of her father, who was a strict person, and she was afraid that her father is going to beat her because she wasn't able to sell a single matchbox. For her, beside, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them, and the wind whistled through that, even though the largest crack was stuffed with straw and rags. Even if he, and the second reason why she didn't want to go back home was that her house was, as I told you, it was they were so poor that the roof had big cracks, and they tried to mend the crack with the straw and rag, but still it was, when the wind blew, it came through those cracks inside the house, and it wasn't a warm place at all. So there were two reasons why she didn't want to go back home. One was because of her father, who was so strict, and she was afraid that he is going to beat her for not selling any of the matchbox. And the second reason, that the house was not at all warm, and she would face the same situation as she's out, same situation at home also. Her thin hands were almost numbed with cold. To the hand, she was without any sensation now because of the cold. When you stay out for a longer period of time at a very cold time, and you have very less to wear, then you feel the same thing. Generally, it happens we are without any sensation, and same happened with that girl. If only she dared pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall, and warm her finger, and the only idea, only thought that came to her mind was to pull up one matchstick and have some warmth and light. She pulled out one, scratch. How it spluttered and burned. She took out one matchstick, she scratched it, and the way the matchstick ejected, the light came out of it, and it burned. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. So as it happens, when we are all alone, a small help at times could be a big sort of a help for us. It's a sort of a blessing in disguise, and that was for her also. How could you can imagine how big could be the fire of that small matchstick could be, but it gave her warmth, bright light, and in that light she had a strange scene. That was her first dream. It could be her imagination also. We can't call it a dream because she wasn't sleeping at all. She imagined. That was her first imagination. It seemed to the little girl as if she was sitting in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornament. So it appeared to her that she is sitting in front of a big iron gas stove which had brass knobs and brass ornaments. The fire burned so beautiful, as it was a great iron stove, so the fire coming out of it was beautiful. and gave out such a lovely warmth. And she was having such a lovely warmth. Oh, how wonderful that was. And it was a wonderful scene, a brilliant scene for her. The child had already stretched her feet to warm them. So she stretched herself, she made herself comfortable to get the warmth of that iron stove which was in front of her. When out went the flame, the stove vanished, and there she sat with the burnt match in her hand. And very soon, the moment the matchstick, the fire of the matchstick went away, everything disappeared. The iron stove disappeared with the brass knobs and ornaments, and she was having the burnt match in her hand, and again it was gloomy, dark, and very cold. She struck another. Now, because of that idea she got, that by just burning, lighting up this matchstick, she got the warmth, though it was for just for a second, but still she got something. And she struck another. She took out the second one, she struck another. It burned clearly. Again it burned clearly and brightly. And where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent. So this was the second imagination. Again, the second time when she lit up the matchstick, the bricks in front of her of the wall became transparent, like gauze. Gauze is a transparent cloth. She could see right into the room where a shining white cloth was spread on the table. And she was able to see through that wall, because it had become a transparent wall. And she could see inside the room where a table was there, and a tablecloth was there on the table, and it was covered with beautiful china. China is porcelain also, it's ceramic also. So the utensils which were made of ceramic, which were there laid on the table, and in the center it stood a roast goose. So this is what she thought or admired when she was out on the streets all alone, and suddenly the roast goose was in front of her on the table, with prunes and apples steaming deliciously. Prunes means plum, a stone fruit, and apples, and it was all steaming. The steam coming out of it was very delicious. The smell was wonderful. And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down from the dish, and something that astonished her, that surprised her, that the goose jumped down from the table, waddled across the floor with carving knife and fork in its back, waddled straight up to the poor child. And the goose came walking, taking small steps, came to the small girl with the carving knife and a fork in its back. So that is something like sort of something impossible. Like the roasted goose, how can the roasted goose get up and move? But that was the beautiful imagination. We will call it a beautiful imagination, because she, being a small child, helpless out on the street, was imagining such a beautiful thing. Generally, when we are depressed, we are down, we have these sort of thoughts. And remember, she was a small girl. Then out went the match, and again the same happened. Out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick cold wall. And again nothing was visible apart from the thick cold wall where she was sitting in front, where she was sitting, and the wall was in front of her. She struck another match. Now she took out the third match, she struck another, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. And this time the view was of a Christmas tree. Remember, it was a New Year Eve and Christmas passed just 5 days ago only. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass door of the rich merchant's house. These poor children, I have seen many times, maybe you people must have seen, they peep through the glass windows and the glass doors of the big shops to see the view inside. They don't have the courage, they don't dare to get inside the shop, so they have the view from outside only. And she also had the same view from a glass door of a rich merchant's house, where she saw the Christmas tree, and the Christmas tree which was in front of her right now was larger than the Christmas tree she saw previous year. 1,000 candles lit up the green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. So suddenly 1,000 candles appeared to lit up on the green branches of the Christmas tree, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop window, and the same colored ball which she saw the last year in the shop, same shop, were there. The little girl reached towards with both her hands. She tried to catch those things with both her hands because she wanted, maybe she thought that again the things are going to disappear as it happened to her twice before as well. So she wanted to take hold of those things, collect those things, to keep those things with her forever. Then out went the match, and again the same thing. Unfortunately, the same thing happened. Out went the match. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air. The candles on the Christmas tree starting rising higher and higher. They rose higher and higher through the air. And she saw that they had now turned into bright stars, and finally they turned into bright stars. One of them fell streaking the sky with light, and one of them star died, means broken. And suddenly she remembered her grandmother saying, "Now someone is dying." And said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, "Whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God." We have seen this in many movies, we have read this in many books also, that whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. Even we were told this by our parents and grandparents. And same, her grandmother told her that when she saw a star dying, when she saw a star broken, falling down, she said that someone is dying. She suddenly remembered her grandmother whom she loved dearly, her words that someone is dying. She struck another match on the wall. So this was the fourth matchstick she struck on the wall. Once more there was light, and again the same light. But this time it was something different for her that made her happy. Though all the three sights made her happy, but this time she was happier in comparison with the early sights. In the glow stood her old grandmother, and in the glow of that light stood her old grandmother, who was no more, who so bright and shining and looking so gentle, kind and loving. She was looking bright, marvelous, looking so gentle, kind and loving. "Granny," cried the little girl. The little girl cried with joy. Granny, seeing her grandmother in front of her. "Oh, take me with you." And she pleaded, she requested her to take her with her. "I know you will disappear." And she was afraid also. Here she is afraid because earlier also the same happened with her. She burned 3 matchsticks and all 3 visions disappeared. The fantastic, the magnificent visions which were there in front of her suddenly disappeared after being with her for a few seconds or a minute, and they disappeared. And she didn't want to lose her grandmother once again. Once again, when I say, remember, her grandmother was no more. "I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove." And she pleaded, she requested, she told her grandmother that she is also going to vanish like the warm stove. The first sight she had, the lovely roast goose, the second sight, and the great glorious Christmas tree, the third sight she had. Then she quickly struck all the rest of the matches she had in the packet, for she did so want to keep her grandmother with her. And for the sake of keeping her grandmother with her, the rest of the matchstick which she had in her hand, she burnt all the matchstick. She struck all the rest of the matchstick. She wanted the light to be there forever and ever because she didn't want to miss her grandmother. She wanted to be in the company of her grandmother. The match just flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than broad daylight. It gave a brilliant sparkle of light. It was the author has compared it to the broad daylight. Remember, broad daylight, the sun is there, and the daylight, the matchstick burned, and the fire, the light which came out of the matchstick is compared with the bright daylight. And her grandmother had never seen so beautiful or so stately before. And her grandmother looked impressive and beautiful than ever. She took the little girl in her arms, and grandmother took her granddaughter in her arms and flew with her high up. Up she went, higher and higher. Oh, so high. High, she was moving higher and higher towards glory and joy. She went higher and higher. She was going towards the place where is glory and joy is there. So which is that place where glory, joy, no suffering, nothing is there? So that is the place with Almighty God. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger. So that she was not worried about cold Neither she was hungry, nor she had a fear of a father, for they were both with God. They were both at a safer place, they both were with God. But in the cold dawn, in the morning, the next day, the New Year morning, in the corner formed by the two houses, in between the two houses where the girl was placed herself comfortably the previous night, sat the little girl. Still she was sitting with rosy cheek. Her cheeks were red like rose, and the smiling lips. Still she had a smile on her lips. It could be because of the beautiful vision she had, or it could be the reason she was with her grandmother, or it could be the reason that she went to the Almighty. Dead, frozen to death. She was no more. She was dead, frozen to death. Because of the cold she died on the last evening of the old year. It happened the last evening of the old year. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of the girl. The dawn, the morning of the new year, a crowd of people were there next to the figure of that girl. Still, she was holding the matches and half a packet had been burned. She was still holding the matchstick, half of the packet was burnt. She was evidently trying to warm herself, said people who were there. They looked at the body of that girl. Looking at the body of that girl, they guessed the reason could be this cold, and she was trying to keep herself warm, and failing to do so, she died. But no one knew what beautiful vision she had seen and in what a blaze of glory she had entered with a dear old grandmother. But no one had any idea, no one knew about the beautiful, the magnificent views she had, the vision she had, and the blaze of glory she had. She was so happy when she entered a new phase of her life, that was after her death, where she was with her beloved grandmother, where she was with a grandmother, where she was with a person who loved her dearly, into the heavenly joy, the joy which are there in heaven. Gladness of a new year, new life for that girl who was a poor girl who suffered so much in her life. She was all alone, though she had a father, but she was so afraid of her father, scared of her father, that she did not dare to go back home, because she wasn't able to sell a single matchbox. That's why she was so afraid of her father. So that's the end of the explanation. Remember to subscribe the channel Study with Deepak. Thank you.